I'm Dr. Joshua Houston. It's my pleasure to bring these sermons and Bible lessons to you from the Salem Creek Church of Christ in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. I hope today's lesson is a blessing to you. Now open your Bible, open your heart, and let's dive into the Word together. Biblical truth, practical wisdom, faithful teaching. That's deeper in the Word. Men and women have mega needs, and men's mega need is for respect and honor, and that's seen in Ephesians chapter 5, where the text says, "Wives, submit to your husbands." Again, there, the same way that you treat your husband is the way that you should treat the Lord, and the way that you treat the Lord is the way you should treat your husband. And that's because we submit to the Lord and you submit to your husband. Ephesians 5 also speaks to the mega need of women, and that is for love, acceptance, and security. So just to reiterate what we said last week about mega needs are oxygen in our world, and if we don't get oxygen, then one of two things is going to happen. We're either going to suffocate or we're going to get it from somewhere else. And neither one of those makes for a healthy marriage. Okay, so we don't want to suffocate in our marriages. We don't want to look elsewhere for the things that we need. So Ephesians chapter 5 and verse 25 is going to show us the mega need of women. God knew exactly what He was doing when He told men and women how to treat one another in marriage. Ephesians chapter 5 verse 25 says, "Husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave Himself up for her." So wives submit, husbands love. Now we didn't mention this last week, but something important for the lovely ladies to know is that just about every time a preacher or seminar speaker, Bible class teacher, or whatever talks about wives submitting, somebody gets mad. Okay? Somebody does. We don't like that. Well, ladies, here's a word of encouragement to you. If you measure it by the words in Greek, Paul has twice as much to say to the men as he does to the women. So husbands, love your wives. Women need to feel loved, accepted, and secure. So that's the mega need of women. How then do we show our wives the love and acceptance and security that they need? Well, he tells us here in verse 25, because Christ loved the church and gave Himself up for her. And verse 26 continues, that He might sanctify her, having cleansed her by the washing of water with the word, so that He might present the church to Himself in splendor, without spot or wrinkle or any such thing, that she might be holy and without blemish. In the same way, husbands should love their wives as their own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself. For no one ever hated his own flesh, but nourishes and cherishes it, just as Christ does the church, because we are members of His body. Therefore a man shall leave his father and mother, and hold fast to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. This mystery is profound, and I'm saying that this refers to Christ and the church. However, let each one of you love his wife as himself, and let the wife see that she respects her husband. So there are two ways in that text that husbands show their wives, and we love you, that we respect you, that we accept you and give you security. And the first way is to have a sacrificial love for your spouse. Husbands are called to lay down their lives for their wives. And we're going to look at some ways on how to do that in just a moment. The other way is to realize that when I am treating my spouse in a certain way, I'm treating myself that way. We treat our spouses as ourselves. We rarely understand the truth of the Genesis 2:24 that the two shall become one flesh. Right? The two shall become one flesh. And so we live in a separatist culture where you can be a husband and a wife, but you can go off and do your thing. You go off and do your thing. You have your own life, your own career, your own path, your own passions, and you do the same. And then we'll come back and eat dinner together, maybe. Not a lot of people do that anymore, unfortunately. We'll eat dinner together, and then we'll go to bed, and then we'll get up the next day and just go on our separate paths. But when the two become one flesh, my path is your path, and your path is my path. And we're going to do those things together. So those two ways, number one, is to sacrifice, and number two is to treat them as yourself. And so how do we do that? Well, the first thing that we need to understand as husbands is we have to have this mentality that says, to my hurt, I will fulfill your needs. To my hurt, I will fulfill your needs. And so the needs that we're going to talk about tonight, these 4 needs of women in marriage, I have to sacrifice as a man in order to fulfill those. So we talked last week as we concluded that these 2 commands, the command for men and the command for women, are the 2 hardest and counter-nature things that God will call us to do. Men are not good at showing and expressing love traditionally. Men are not good at expressing love. We're cold, we're calloused, we're held within, and we're not good at that. But our wives need that love and acceptance and security. They need to know that they're loved. They need to be told that they're loved. They need to be shown that they're loved. So how do we do that? A few weeks ago, when we had the sermon on the 4 laws of marriage, we spent quite a bit of time talking about that first law, the law of priority. The law of priority says marriage only works if it comes in first place. And then the law of possession, that the 2 become one flesh. Here's what those mean in fulfilling the mega need of our wives. I will crawl through cut glass and lemon juice to make sure you have what you need. I will go to the ends of the earth. I will sacrifice the things that I want, the things that I desire, to make sure that you are provided for and cared for. So to my hurt, I will meet your needs. Now, another thing, husbands, that we have to do for our wives is we have to study our wives. We have to study them, and we have to provide for them. Every person, whether you're a man or a woman, every person needs to know your spouse's love language. Okay? Now, some people, that's easy. Other people, it's not. And usually what happens is the love language in which we feel love, we receive love, that is naturally how we try to give love. Now the problem is that's not how everybody receives love. And so I don't want to make it a habit of using Kayla and myself as an example. As a preacher, I try very hard not to draw her into my sermons, or our daughter for that matter. But this is a good example, and I know her and she knows me, and this is kind of what I know, so I'll talk about it. My love language is words of affirmation, hands down. It's like a 90% words of affirmation. Okay? Kayla's love language, number 2, is words of affirmation, so she receives love with that. But her number 1 love language, at least it changes over time, and so the last time that we talked about this, her love language is quality time. That is not my love language. It's not even in the top 3 for me, I don't think. It's not something that's important to me, but it's very important to her. And so when she wants to go do something, what I hear is I have to give up time and money to go do something I don't care anything about. Okay? What she hears is this is how we express our love for one another. Right? So, as a husband, what I get the joy of doing, and I'm being serious here, what I get the joy of doing is saying, to my hurt, I will meet your needs. It will be to my hurt to spend money and time that I don't really have. But it's going to meet your needs. Okay? So study your spouse and provide for them and be willing to sacrifice. So how do I do this? 4 ways that we can show love and acceptance and security to our wives. Number 1, be sensitive to her needs. Be sensitive to her needs. So that includes the needs here. It also includes the needs expressed in the love language. Right? So be sensitive to her needs. Number 2, don't make her nag or beg. Now we talked about this last week with men. Ladies, you will never nag your husband into submission. It will not work because a man's mega need is for respect and honor. The only thing that you will do by nagging your husband is break him down. Okay? And then when you break him down, he's not going to give you love, acceptance, and security. A broken man cannot give security to a woman. It can't happen. So you cannot nag your husband into submission. Husbands, it's a whole lot easier to not be nagged if you don't cause the nagging. Okay? So don't make her nag or beg. One of the things we talked about with husbands last week is that husbands don't need a mother, they need a friend. Okay? We already have a mother, we don't need another one. Right? Mothers nag their children. Okay, and this is what we get whenever our wives nag. So don't make her nag or beg. Number 3, let her know that she's on your heart. Let her know that she's on your heart. The law of pursuit, which is the second law of marriage, the law of pursuit, says that I'm going to put forth effort to make sure that you know that you're loved in this relationship. Now that looks different to different people depending on your love language. And what happens over time is we get so comfortable and so complacent in our relationships that we stop pursuing our spouse. Right? When you date, you pursue one another. Okay? When you get married, for some reason, we stop pursuing one another. So one of the best pieces of advice I got in the marriage relationship was never stop dating your spouse. Right? And you all have probably heard that, and that's a good piece of advice to follow. Never stop dating your spouse. But when you pursue your spouse, you put forth effort. And so how do I let my spouse know that she's on my heart? Well, today we have text messages and things like that and Facebook and whatnot. You can do things like that. I will say, though, that there is always, for whatever reason, there is always a greater degree of appreciation and importance to something handwritten to something text. Okay? So here at Salem Creek, I'll give you a case in point. When people come and visit us at Salem Creek, we would have a pre-written document that we would print out and sign our name at the bottom of the page and send them, and we would say thank you for visiting Salem Creek, but it was just pre-done. And we decided a few months ago we're not going to do that anymore. We're going to send a handwritten note to every visitor who comes because we want them to know we love you and are thankful that you're here. And that has worked extremely well, extremely well. There's something about a handwritten note. So husbands, maybe a challenge for you this week. Just one day this week, slip a handwritten note in your wife's vehicle, in her purse, in her lunchbox or whatever. When Kayla and I got married, our schedules are so chaotic now we haven't done this recently. But when we first got married, my job was to get up at 4 o'clock with her because I'm a light sleeper. If she's up, I'm up. So she would get up and I would make her lunch. That was my job. I'd make her lunch and make her coffee while she got ready to go to the hospital. And I didn't mind doing that. I was already up and I was making my lunch and my coffee too, so it wasn't a problem. But every now and then I would try to slip a note into her lunchbox so that she could read it on her lunch break. And it just might be something like, you're doing a good job. I'm proud of you. Something like that. Like I said, I haven't done that in the recent past. I haven't had a chance to, and maybe that needs to start back again. So let her know that she's on your heart. And then number 4, way to prove love, acceptance, and security, and this is really with security, is be the financial leader of your family. Be the financial leader of your family. What is happening with young couples especially is there tends to be a type A woman and a type B man in the relationship. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that at all. Knowing your personality type is very helpful, and usually type A and type B's work well together because you have one who makes the plans. And we'll put it this way. It seems to me that every couple is made up of 2 people, one who tells the waiter that their order is wrong and the other who apologizes for saying that your order is wrong. Right? So type A and type B is fine. But it's starting to become more, because to go back on biblical masculinity and biblical femininity, our young ladies are being taught you actually have to be the man in the relationship. You have to take charge. You have to take the lead. And that's really a shame. It's really a shame, and it's contrary to God's will for the marriage. The husband is called to be the loving leader of the family. And so there are a lot of men who have no idea how much money is in the bank account. They don't know what bills are being paid. They don't know when the bills are due. And maybe your wife is better at handling the money than you are. That's fine. But you need to know what's happening in your family. You need to know what's happening. Okay, so take that initiative. Be the financial leader. All right, so number 1, mega need of women is love, acceptance, and security. All women need that. It's oxygen in their world, and it's our job as husbands to give that to them. Number 2, we're going to probably spend most of our time talking about this. And we might not get to the last 2 tonight. We'll have to come back and do those again. That's fine. Open and honest communication. Now, I want to reiterate men's 4 needs in marriage, and I want you to see the parallel. It's going to seem like there's not one, but there is. The number one need of men in marriage is for respect and honor. Number 2 is sexual fulfillment. Number 3 is friendship. Number 4 is domestic support. Okay? Women. Love, acceptance, and security. Open and honest communication. You say, what's the parallel? Men are the most open and honest when they're having fun with their spouse and immediately after sex. Okay? And so it's going to seem like there's not a correlation, but there is. God has given us everything we need to make sure that our marriages are strong and hold together. And so how I feed your needs will feed into how you feed my needs. Okay? So open and honest communication. Last week, I encouraged the wives because women are physically modest. Most women are. Men are physically immodest. God made us to be visual and sensual creatures. That's fine. Men, on the other hand, are emotionally modest. We don't like to open up about our feelings. We don't like to talk about our day. You know, I can talk about the 10-point buck that my buddy shot, but I'm not going to really ask him how he felt about it. Right? Women are emotionally immodest. So the best way I know how to describe this is imagine that you go into a coffee shop in the morning. Okay? And there's a table of 4 women sitting around drinking coffee and a table of 4 men sitting around drinking coffee. What are their conversations going to be like, and how are they going to be different? Okay? The men may not say a word. And the women may not be able to get a word in edgewise because of all the talking. And that's okay. God made women to be open and honest communicators, and we need that. So for men, we need to understand that our wives don't just want the headlines. Right? So you walk in after work and your wife says, well, how was work? Fine. Well, what'd you do? Nothing. Who'd you talk to? No one. No. Here's what she wants to hear. Well, honey, at 4:42 this morning, I came into consciousness. I wasn't awake yet. My eyes hadn't opened. But I could hear the rustling of the air conditioner and the ceiling fan going, and I started to open my eyes. And when I opened my eyes, I got scared because I saw the dog, and I thought the dog was something else, and it kind of made me jump a little bit. So then I got up and went and brushed my teeth. And I brushed my teeth for 30 seconds, and then I spit. And then I ran the toothbrush under the water, and I brushed for 30 more seconds, and then I just kept going. And finally, I felt that I was done. But you know what? I think we need more toothpaste, and I probably need a new toothbrush. So next time we go to the store, why don't you get me more toothpaste and more toothbrush? We ain't even got to work yet. Okay? Our wives like details because they want to know us. They want to know the things that happen in our day, and because they care. So they crave the details. She doesn't just want the event. She wants the emotions and the feelings. One of the worst things that Kayla has ever asked me in our 7 years of marriage is, how'd you feel about that? I don't know. I don't even know that I feel most of the time. Well, how'd you feel about that? Well, I don't know. But men are emotionally modest, and we don't like to talk about our feelings. And usually what happens with men, if you're not careful, and a lot of men aren't raised to be healthy with their emotions, it's just a fact of how we are. What happens is we shove our emotions way deep down, and then eventually it bottles up and it explodes. And when it explodes, it's very, very bad. And we say and do things that I say that we don't mean, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. We'll say and do things that we shouldn't say and do, and it'll be very bad. So we want to healthily deal with our emotions. So when our wives ask us how we felt about some things, we need to say that. Now, men, maybe take this note as well. It's okay to take a deep breath and pause and think before you speak. Okay? And a lot of you will realize that it's not what you said, it's how you said it, right? I encouraged the men last week, I encouraged the women last week, the wives. Because a man's number 2 need is for sexual fulfillment, and we don't talk about that a lot in churches, but encourage the wives, be more sexual than you feel. It's your husband's need, and it's not a carnal reality. This is something that is actually emotional and is important for most men. Only 20% of women are more sexual than their husbands. This week I'm going to give the men a challenge on the same line, and I promise it's not going to seem like it, but it's just as uncomfortable as the previous challenge. And that is, men, be more open and honest than you feel. Some couples have to schedule time for sexual enjoyment. Some couples have to do that in order to make sure needs are met. Some couples have to schedule time to talk. And maybe that's what we need to do. In the hustle and bustle of life, whenever most couples now are working, at least both parties are working a job or maybe more than one job, and then you have kids come in the mix and you have familial duties elsewhere, it can be very difficult to just sit down and talk. So schedule time to talk. Talk more than you feel. It's very hard to do for men. So men, talk more than you feel, and that's the challenge for us this week. So let's. I want to take just a minute here and talk about communication a little more deeply, because most men do not understand the power of communication, and most women don't understand the power of communication. Women like to communicate. Men don't necessarily like to communicate, but neither of us understand the power of it. You know, in Psalm 100 and verse 4, the text says that God will not allow a negative person in His presence. Psalm 100 verse 4, come before His gates with thanksgiving and with praise. God's not going to allow a negative person into the Holy of Holies. Okay? Well, my heart is a Holy of Holy. And my wife's heart is a Holy of Holy. And I'm not going to allow negativity to come into that. So communication is how we know people. 70%, let's see, I think I have this on the next slide. Yeah, not 70. 7% of communication is verbal, which means 93 is nonverbal. Okay. Now, what does that mean? Verbal communication is literally nothing more than the words that are being spoken or written. Nonverbal communication is the tone, the inflection, hand gestures, even something like our clothing, facial expressions. All of that is nonverbal. Okay? So if I had a simple phrase of feed the dog, okay, 3 words, an imperative phrase. If I put emphasis on each word differently, it changes the whole meaning of the text, right? Feed the dog. Feed the dog. Feed the dog, right? It changes the whole meaning, right? So how we communicate is not just the words that we say. And so this is what happens in marriage. We say things and then we get this phrase that is so common, it's not what you said, it's how you said it, right? Well, that's because communication is 93% nonverbal. So we have here 2 particular dangers and problems with communication in marriage. And the first is that we don't understand the power of words. We don't understand the power of words. We live in a vulgar and sarcastic society. We have become so immune to vulgarity and sarcasm, it's just in one ear and out the other. I mean, the songs that we listen to, the TV shows that we watch, it's very vulgar and very sarcastic society. But Proverbs chapter 18 and verses 20 and 21, I want to read this to us real quick. Now, the book of Proverbs is very interesting because it's a collection of sayings. So in one verse you can have something that says one thing, the next verse can say the exact opposite. But they're proverbial sayings, which means they're true only in the circumstance in which they're called for. But I don't think that the Proverbs are arranged by accident. Okay? So Proverbs 18 and verse 20 says, from the fruit of a man's mouth his stomach is satisfied. He is satisfied by the yield of his lips. Now that's verse 20. Verse 21 says, death and life are in the power of the tongue, and those who love it will eat its fruits. Verse 22 says, he who finds a wife finds a good thing and obtains favor from the Lord. So verse 20 says, death and life are in the power of the tongue, and verse 21 says, I'm getting these wrong. Verse 21 says, death and life are in the power of the tongue. Verse 22 says, he who finds a wife finds a good thing. I don't believe those are put there together on accident. How we talk to one another is very important. Death and life are in the power of the tongue. Words have power. God spoke the world into existence. Genesis chapter 1, we see that in verse 3. John chapter 1 and verses 1 through 4 shows us that as well, that through the Word came all of creation. Every great marriage, if you just think about the people in your life that you know who have the best marriages, I would imagine that one of the first categories or qualities that they would have is that they have positive communication. They compliment one another. They praise one another. They speak well of one another. There's a guy who does a podcast. I love listening to it, and he I've talked about him before. He's done a lot combating pornography and helping men overcome pornography addiction. And he and his wife have done this ministry together. And she'll come on the podcast every now and then and talk about working with women who are also addicted to pornography and her role in helping them. And every time he talks about her or to her, it's always my lovely wife or my beautiful wife or you're precious, I love you. I mean, it's just constant. It gets old after a while listening to it on a podcast, but it is just constant. And it's actually a very beautiful thing. Men, we need to make a habit of that. God has a plan for our marriages. Can we all agree about that? God has a plan for our marriage. You know who else has a plan for our marriage? The devil. Right. And if God can create the entire world with a spoken word, what can I do with my marriage with a spoken word? Right. Now, here's what the devil will do. The devil will use your mouth to destroy yourself and your marriage. So how we talk to our spouse, how we talk to ourselves or think about ourselves is obviously important. I don't at all want to diminish the tragedy of being physically abused. Okay. There may be somebody in this room who has been in a relationship. I'm sorry that happened. I pray that it never happens again and that none of us in here have experienced that. But verbal abuse is equally as awful. Verbal abuse cuts you to your heart. Right? Verbal abuse makes you see yourself in ways that God didn't design us to see. And so, just another passage real quick here from Matthew chapter 12. This is verse 36 and 37. Jesus is talking about how you know a tree by its fruit. And so verse 36 says, I tell you on the day of judgment, people will give an account for every careless word they speak. For by your words you will be justified, and by your words you'll be condemned. Oh, that's scary. Right, that on Judgment Day we're going to be judged by the words that we said, by the careless words that we said. How many times, men, have we lashed out at our spouses in anger and said things that we would argue we don't mean? Right? Well, we better repent. You know, by their fruits you will know them. Okay, well, we bear fruit by the words of our mouth. So here are five common deceptions concerning our words. These are things that people believe about our words that just aren't true. They're not true. So number one is we believe that words are evaporative, meaning, well, I can say it, but it'll just go away. Sometimes we forget that celebrities are real people, and maybe they do some of these dumb things to themselves, but when the female flight crew was blasted off into space, and there was a few celebrities on that crew, when they came back and everyone was calling them astronauts, they were made fun of quite a bit, right? Because they didn't have any formal astronaut training, and they're celebrities, and some of them were singers and talk show hosts and whatever else, and people were making a great deal of fun of them. And Kayla and I were talking about that this afternoon, and she said, you think that they just don't know all the stuff that's being said about them? I said, no, they know. They probably just have to go to great lengths to avoid it. Well, we think that words are evaporative. That I can put something out there and say something about someone, and it just kind of floats off and goes away into the ether. But they're not. Words do not go away. Words stick and have meaning and are heavy. The second thing is that we believe that words are non-revealing. And this is what I've been saying about well, I didn't mean that. Right, we say something and then we say, well, I didn't mean that. Yes, you did. Yes, you did. You did, or you wouldn't have said it. Right? Now, the way you said it may have made it sound different, but you meant what you said. And sometimes when we lash out in anger, we say things that are on our hearts and that the devil uses our mouth to communicate, but you can't say, I didn't mean that. Words reveal. That's what Matthew chapter 12, verse 36 and 37 says. Our words reveal our hearts. Number 3, we believe words are substitutionary, meaning I can say something but then not follow up with it. So I'll put this in 2 very different extreme categories, but both of them parallel one another as examples. Wives, this happens a lot in marriage. Whenever your husband approaches you for sex and you say, okay, well, tonight. And then tonight comes and nothing happens. Right? Well, words are substitutionary. We said we were, then we didn't. Here's another one that's maybe more applicable for all of us that all Christians are guilty of doing if we're not careful. And that is having someone who's hurting and we say, I'll pray for you. And then we don't. Happens all the time. Right? Very guilty of that. Okay, in that case, words are substitutionary, and we say that we can use words and then not follow up with it. Well, if you say something, you have to mean it. Number 4, we believe words are powerless, which means I would say something, but it wouldn't matter if I did. Now, this isn't necessarily true for our wives, but this is more true for our husbands because husbands are emotionally modest. And a lot of husbands think that when their wives are unhappy or there's a problem in the marriage, the best thing to do is to keep their mouth shut, not talk about it, and just kind of let it go by the wayside. That is wrong. Your words are meaningful. And so you sit down and you ensure the first law or the first need of women is being met, that your wife knows that she is lovely, that she's beautiful, that you love her and would do anything for her and you'd always choose her, and then you talk about it. And then the 5th common misconception about our words is the belief that bad words will bring good results. That if I just yell or if I just scold or if I cuss up one side and down the other, that's going to make you change. You know what it's going to do? It's going to make your spouse hate you more. Right? Because we can build up and we can cut down with our words. So those are the 5 common misconceptions concerning words under the first danger of communication, which is that we don't understand the power of words. Okay, the second danger of communication is that we just don't understand the difference between men and women. Men and women are different. Men and women communicate different. God made our little pea brains with different wires connected, and we're just different. And the problem is we try to joke about that, and we try to make these little quibs about these things. And we don't need to do that. We need to respect and honor our differences, to acknowledge our differences, and to work through our differences so that we can have effective communication. I mentioned it earlier, it bears mentioning again. Communication, at least on the list, and these lists are statistical, they're not true, of course, for every single person in this order. But communication is as important to women as sex is to men. Now, guys, we know how important that is. Okay? If we take that same mentality and apply it to our wives, do you think that would make a change in how we communicate with our wives, how we fulfill that need? It should. But here's the thing, ladies, that you need to understand about your husbands. Husbands are emotionally modest, and so we're not going to pour our hearts out to you unless we understand that it's safe, that we can trust you with the things that we're feeling. And so you can take it to the bank. I promise you. If your husband tells you something that is a secret or that's really bothering him, or that he doesn't want other people to know about, he's insecure about. And if you tell one person, your sister, your mom, your best friend, the hairstylist, I don't care. You tell one person and your husband finds out, he will never open up to you to that degree ever again until he can feel safe with you again. Okay? Men are emotionally modest. The same is true with women and sexual fulfillment. So I'm using this as a one-to-one because it's on equal playing fields, y'all. Guys, what would you expect if you took your wife to the marriage bed and there were cameras set up on a live stream and everything that you were about to do was to be broadcast to the world, do you think she would ever touch you again? I sure hope not. Same level of emotion. Okay? Same level of emotion. So let's treat communication with great care in our marriage. We hear through our deepest need, so men hear through respect and women hear through security. I was getting ready to teach the class, and it just so happened, I don't know why, maybe the Lord works in mysterious ways, but I just so happened to see a little snippet from a podcast from a marriage expert who had recently done a study. You know, the number one, what did she say? The number one requested thing from men, from their wives, for their wives to say to them in marriage, the number one phrase that men wanted to hear the most. Thank you. Thank you. The number one phrase that women wanted to hear the most from their husbands. I love you. Okay? Now, think about this. Women's mega need is for love, acceptance, and security. So when you start a conversation, and you're having this open and honest communication, husbands, we have to communicate to our wives, even though what we're about to talk about we probably have disagreement over, and we're probably going to need to deal with this. I love you. You're safe. I would always choose you, and I'll always come back to you. Wives, your husband needs to hear, I'm proud of you. You can do it. Thank you for all you do for our family. I'm glad you're my husband. You start every conversation with those sentences, whatever conversation you have will come out fine. Okay. So when we speak with each other's best interests at heart, and we communicate care through our body language. Again, not what you said, but how you said it. And so your body language, maybe it's the hold of a hand, or maybe it's sitting down across from the dinner table or something like that. There's great power in praising your spouse. So for all of its terrible, no good, very bad things, one thing social media has done is it has allowed the praise of the people we care about to a huge audience. Right? And people who see it on social media may not give two cares about it, and that's fine. But especially if your spouse's love language is words of affirmation, it's not a bad idea to do that. So to praise your spouse and figure out how you can do that. All right, well, I think we have just enough time here as we're getting ready to close to talk about the third need of women in marriage, and that is for non-sexual affection. Non-sexual affection. This could not be further from a man's brain. Right? So going back to what we said last week, a man approaches his wife and says, I need sex. And she says, no, all you need is a hug. Right? Well, why? Because sexual fulfillment is typically not in the top 10 of a woman's need in marriage. Statistically. Okay? 20% are more sexual than their husbands. But women need non-sexual affection. So men, listen to your wife when she says she needs this. When she says she needs you to hold her hand, to give her a hug, for the back rub to be only a back rub. Right? Listen to that and respect it and honor it. She wants to feel more than a sex object. Right? Now, to Christians, this is obviously true because we know that every person's created in the image of God, and I'm going to treat my spouse especially like she's created in the image of God, and I'm not going to abuse her for carnal gain. But not a lot of people understand that, and so she wants to feel like a person, not just some sex object. Now, this is very difficult to show non-sexual affection. This is very difficult when you come from a non-affectionate home. A lot of men come from non-affectionate homes. Especially men, statistically, who grow up in a military-style household, right? Where it's do what I say, when I say it, how I say it, no hugs. At best you might get a handshake at graduation. That's very difficult because we're not taught how to show non-sexual affection. I would say, too, show appropriate affection in public. Now, not gross PDA, but show your spouse that you're proud of them and that you're happy to be seen with them in public in whatever ways are appropriate. One edition of Reader's Digest, I believe this was back from 2015, on the front cover of it, which, when you're standing in the checkout line looking at the tabloids, those front covers are very provocative, aren't they? The front cover said the top 3 sex secrets according to women. All right, well, let's see what they are. Number 1, intimate conversation. Number 2, attention after sex. And number 3, tenderness and non-sexual affection. Well, let's just give them the Nobel Prize for such a discovery. Right? This is exactly what we're saying. I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that men and women are different and that women have that need. Okay, so the interesting thing about this is, again, when we look at the 4 needs of men and the 4 needs of women, there doesn't seem like there's a one-to-one connection. But there is. Okay? Women were polled, this poll happened in 2021, women were polled by the University of Michigan's, I believe it was University of Michigan's Marriage Center. When is your husband most attractive to you? You know what most of them said? Over 90% said when he's doing housework. Okay? Now that's not a demeaning thing to a husband. Okay? What that is men, we think we're going to be attractive to our wives because we go to the gym and we get sweaty and we got muscles and, all this good stuff. Yeah, no, pick up a broom, okay? Pick up a broom and watch her swoon, print that on a t-shirt and sell it. Non-sexual affection. The more non-sexual affection your wife receives, the more sexual she becomes. Again, I'm not talking about carnal sexuality. I'm saying that makes you attractive to her. And that makes her come to you, and then you come together in the marriage bed, and that makes you come to her. Right? So God has given us everything we need to be successful in marriage. We just have to understand our needs and how to fill them. Right? Let's real quick, because I don't want to just leave one, and this one won't take too terribly long. The 4th need of women in marriage is for leadership. Women need their husbands to be the godly leader in 4 areas of their life: children, romance, finance, and spiritual matters. Women need that leadership. And so men need to be the loving initiator in the home, which means be the one to initiate those hard conversations. That means that you've taken initiative. If little Billy comes home and he has F's on his report card, you need to be the one to sit down with little Billy and say, "Hey buddy, I saw you had some F's. Are you having trouble with this? Or are you just not paying attention? You're not doing your work? What's the problem?" Right? I would add, and finance is one of these too. Men need to know where the bank account is and where all the money's going to. Don't make decisions without your wife, but initiate the issues. Okay? So don't make decisions without your wife, initiate the issues. And then number 4, men should never dominate their wives. Deeper in the Word is proud to be part of the Ministry League network of podcasts. You can support the Ministry League network by liking, subscribing, and sharing these videos.